Welcome to the Freestar Publisher Forum. My name is David Richardson. We'll be talking about how the Freestar header bidding works today. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat, and we'll address those at the end of this broadcast. It is a very technical discussion, so don't feel embarrassed if you need to ask a question that seems really simple. There are no stupid questions here, and when you're talking about crazy technology that's not understood. So please ask any questions. So first off, my name is David Richardson. I lead the engineering team here at Freestar. So I came from actually being in the advertising side of the business for 20 years. So before I was working on the supply side, I was on the demand side and purchasing ads for digital campaigns for 20 years and leading a team of engineers to manage and take care of that. While at Freestar, the various things that my team works on is PubFig and PreBid. You've probably heard those two terms multiple times. And what we're going to cover is essentially those two pieces of software that we've written and worked with in order to do the header bidding. Also the dashboard and all the changes and stuff that you see there, my team was responsible for that. We build admin tools, make it easier for the Freestar pub ops guys to be able to publish sites and configure them so that they work well. We also do a bunch of data collection that goes off to the data team so that they can start to come back with all sorts of interesting reports and data and insights into how our network is performing, how your sites are performing, and how we can tune them to work better. We do demand reporting ingest. So what that means is all of the SSPs and DSPs that we work with, we actually get reporting from them, and we have to ingest that and then be able to report that back to the dashboards to make sure that we have accurate numbers. And then most recently, probably the two things that we've been working on that are probably the most exciting is we have our Freestar SSP, where we have our own SSP software that's talking to demand sources directly to try and cut out the middleman and essentially maximize the revenue that we're getting through those channels. And then also the Freestar server to server, which allows us in the future to be able to do mobile SDK and then also be able to off-bid a lot of the pre-bid JS bidders into server to server so we can cache bids and minimize the amount of network traffic that's coming in and improve the speed of how the bidding is working. So let's jump right back in. So I produced this nifty diagram that we're going to be talking through and trying to understand what's happening. So most of the time when we start talking about header bidding, most people think about just pre-bid JS and how that works. And our setup is a little bit more complicated than that because we want to be able to pull from even more sources and be able to generate more revenue for our publishers. So the first thing is that when your site is loaded, we load the PubFig file. So at the top of your pages, you'll remember that there's a load of asynchronously of our PubFig file. And that loads at about 200 to 300 milliseconds. And I'm going to use time here because a lot of times there's concerns about how fast it takes for ads to load and what's happening. But our PubFig file on most instances where we're testing it throughout the United States loads in less than 300 milliseconds. And what PubFig does is immediately kicks off, initializes a bunch of things. So whether that's dynamic ads, that is ad refresh, infinite scroll, sticky footer, video ads, all sorts of things get initialized in this PubFig file and get things going. But when we go to do the initial set of bids, we actually have it set up to where we support pre-bid and other pre-bid adapters. So one of the ones that we're working with right now is also Amazon UAM. And that's a little bit different than their A9. A9 was actually in pre-bid, but they pulled that out, and now they have the UAM adapter, which is their own pre-bid competitor. So we have set it up to where we can actually run against multiple pre-bid headers at one time. So to keep this simple, we're just going to talk about Amazon, and we're going to talk about pre-bid JS. So when we go to bid out for the ad slots, we send those requests to Amazon UAM, and then we send those requests to pre-bid JS. And each of those then goes and does their appropriate thing to go get the bids. When it goes to Amazon UAM, we're not entirely sure what they're doing. That's kind of their black box, but they're going to return back the bids once they're done doing their auction internally. In pre-bid JS, we then look at all the adapters that have, or all the networks that have been approved for your site and load those adapters and then make calls out to them. So you can see here we have network 1, and we have network N. And so most sites tend to run between 12 and 15 different networks, and it all depends on what sites have been approved for what, and this depending upon which networks we have. So one of these networks that's being enabled over the next month for a lot of sites is the new Freestar SSP, which I alluded to earlier. And so these different networks could be things like Rubicon, Be Real Time, Defy Media, for the Freestar SSP, Pulse Point. There's a whole bunch of them, and these networks get all those requests and they send them back. Most of these bids are coming back from Amazon and from PreBid in less than 300 milliseconds also. So it's been about 600 milliseconds. We've received all of the bids back from the various networks. And we then start to do some evaluating of those things. So there's some smarts that we put in during the whole PreBid and the Amazon UAM, where we're actually looking at what is the trend of floors across the networks, and for the person who is being served the ads, and we will dynamically change the bids based upon what's happening with the floors. So if we have bids that are coming in that are too low, we just throw them out because they're not worth our time, and we let the networks know that this is the minimum that we're going to be asking for, so then when they come in, they know what's happening. Also, we've instituted some machine learning to look at what networks are producing the most what we'll call bad ads, whether those are the ads that automatically start with audio or doing redirects. And we look at those trends, and we've noticed that those are in buckets. And so when we get those bids back, if they're within those buckets, we essentially throw out those bids also. So if network X, we know that that most of their bad ads are coming in between 20 and 30 cents, and they come back with a bid that's 25 cents, we're going to throw that out because more than likely that's a bad ad. And we let other demand sources pick it up. So that's one of the ways that we're trying to help minimize the amount of bad ads that you guys are seeing on your side. Okay. Once we get all those bids received back in PreBid, and we've gone through essentially looking at the floors on them and then looking at what the bad ads that are there, we then build the PubBig DFP targeting. And that whole process runs in about going through that whole bid floor, the holes, and the building of the targeting is probably less than 10 milliseconds. So it's a really quick process. We then make the call out to DFP to evaluate those bids. DFP then submits bids to EDBA. So once again, another server-to-server bidding process, and also out to AdX. And they come back with all their bids, and they look at it. So if we back up and we look at this whole process for a second, Amazon typically has at least 10 sources that they're bidding. PreBid, we have another 10 networks that are bidding. And then EDBA has at least another 10 networks that are bidding. So as we can see, we're bidding across somewhere around 20 to 40 different networks for every ad slot that's on your page. So we're trying to really see what we can get out of every auction to make sure that we're getting the best value out of it. Okay. When the EDBA bids and AdX bids come in, we then send it to DFP, and it selects the winner. And then the winner, then we go through and we render the ad slots. And those ads are typically served up. Well, if we go back and we look here, that whole process of them doing the EDBA bids and stuff and selecting the winner, that process takes about another, call that 200 milliseconds, sometimes 300 milliseconds. So in less than a second, we've gone through and done, at least 4 different auctions against 20 different networks, if not 40 different networks, and returned an ad in less than 1 second, which is a pretty amazing feat if you think about it technically. So that was probably a quick overview, and you guys probably have lots of questions about how that works. So let's see if there's anything in the chat window here. So we're waiting for questions to come in. The different networks here, these, one of the other networks that we can have is also the server connection, which eventually is going to allow us to do the bid caching, which means that next time we need to go out and do a bid, instead of having going through this whole process of waiting for 900 milliseconds to get all the bids, we can hold on to all that information and then be able to serve up ads in a much faster state. So one of the questions came in is, where does the new Freestar SSP sit in this diagram? That's an excellent question. So it performs just like any other SSP. So other SSPs that we have, like I mentioned, are like Rubicon, OpenX, Index Exchange, and the Freestar SSP sits at the same level. And that's right here at the network 1 through network N. So when PreBid goes out to bid to the various network sources, it looks at which ones have been configured for those ad slots, because we can configure a network at the whole site level or at each ad slot. So depending upon which networks we think are going to perform best, we can do for the whole site, or we can do it at each ad slot. And those are every SSP is talked to right here from PreBid.js, and that information comes back from PreBid and then goes into PubFig as far as processing the bid. All right, so do we have plans to give report on bid rate, bid density by different demand sources? It is not currently on the roadmap, but the data team is always looking at better ways to report on things. And so we can definitely start to look at that. I know that with our SSP, we're definitely going to look at the bid rate and bid density so we can determine which DSPs are performing the best and how to forward them on to people. Why aren't EBDA and PreBid on the same level? That's a great question. It just happens to be they are equal when they're being compared as far as selecting a winner. It's just that they happen at different parts essentially in the network cycle. So PreBid.js is actually running on the client's browser, and that's where we're going out and fetching all those bids, and they come back into the browser, and then that's where we do some logic on it. We then send it off to DFP, and DFP is what actually submits the bids out to EDBA. So that's actually a function on the server that's actually part of the DFP process. So EDBA is not supposed to know what the values are that came in from PreBid, so they go and they generate all their own auction information. And then ADX is supposed to also generate its own bid information independently. And then DFP looks at all the pricing from all the different SSPs and networks and picks who's the winner of it. And based upon who's the winner, it sends the information back to us. So if Amazon is the one who wins, then DFP invokes code from Amazon to display the ad. If PreBid is the winner, then PreBid is invoked to display the ad. And if it's from ADX, then ADX is invoked to display the ad. And for EDBA, that's a little bit more nebulous to us, but somehow or another, that information is communicated back to the network so that they can write the ad into the slot. Okay, I'm going to just talk through a couple of the features of PubFig really quick to just make sure that we understand all the different features there that can be enabled on your site. It could be that some of these features are enabled or not enabled, and you just understand that they're there is definitely helpful for you understanding what we can do to help monetize your site better. So the one thing that we typically always turn on is ad refresh, and so we set the ad refresh for 30 seconds for all ad slots unless it's filled by an AppNexus adapter. If it's an AppNexus adapter, then we set it to 60 seconds. And that's because most networks let us do ad refresh at 30 seconds, but for AppNexus, they want it to be at 60 seconds. So we adjust the refresh rate per slot based upon who wins that slot. Another feature that we've just recently added is device orientation. So now when you do a device or you change your device, so let's say you're looking at in landscape mode and you change it to portrait mode, we can actually invoke a rebid of the ad slots to make sure that we're getting ads that fill for that width of window that's coming up. We talked a little bit about the dynamic floors, and so that allows us to be able to make sure that we're setting pricing that's applicable for the user. So if we're seeing, one price across most of our network, and we want to make sure that we're requesting that same price from your site, so you're getting the highest price that we're seeing across the network. We do have the sticky footer, so that allows us to essentially be able to, without you having to add code to your slot, we can enable a sticky footer that allows us to put essentially an ad at the bottom of every page programmatically, so you don't even have to change the code on your site, and you're getting an ad slot created and actually displayed into it. Lazy loading is another feature we've added recently too, which allows us to increase the viewability because we only load the ad slots as you're scrolling down the page. So if you have really long pages that have lots of ad slots on it, instead of filling them all immediately, we go out to auction, we get all the bids out for them, and as people scroll, we then start to display the ads, and that helps increase your viewability, which in turn helps increases your CPMs. Your impressions will dip a little bit, but you're going to, because of the higher viewability, if you have any direct campaigns, they're going to be willing to pay a higher price, and plus your CPM rates are going to start to come up. Let's see, we've also recently implemented push-down ads, so we can start to look at that if you're interested. And also, I think a couple of you have also probably heard about the outstream video ads, which we've been seeing some great CPMs on. So once again, without you having to add much code to your site, we can actually do an outstream video ad that gets displayed on your site and generate that. Let's see, got a couple more questions in, so let's take a look at those. All right, we're getting a question. Do you drop the bidder which does not bid on a visitor repeatedly? We don't do that currently. As we start to move more to the server side, that's something we'll actually start to look at. We don't have that ability right now, but it's definitely on the roadmap to be able to say, you know what, these guys aren't bidding on it, so let's not even submit the request to them. So that's definitely there. We also got a question about GPT fast load for speeding up bidding time. I'm not entirely sure what that is. I know that we load the GPT library in an async mode, but I'll have to go look up fast load and see if there's something that can increase the bidding time as far as that. But I'm not sure that that's going to increase the speed at which PreBid or Amazon UAM is coming back with their bids. Do we support bidder selection based on visitor geo? Yes, we do. We actually have whitelist and blacklist that allow us to change which bidders get bid based upon what countries the visitor is coming from. So if people are coming from North Korea, we actually don't bid at all on them because that's against our regulations here in the United States. But we also have a bidder like AOL who doesn't want to bid on anyone that is not in the United States. And so they are whitelisted to where they have to be in the United States, and they won't. We won't set any bids out if they are from outside the United States. Which I guess I could talk a little about the way GDPR is happening right now. So when we initially are coming up, we're loading Zero ID's GDPR library in front of us for compliance testing, and if they're within the EU countries, we actually do some different stuff within PubFig to make sure that we're not capturing their data, and then send it off only to SSPs that support the GDPR protocols and compliance testing. So that's one of the things that PubFig is doing to also make sure that we're ensuring that you guys are all GDPR compliant. So going back to the fast load GDP, one of the tech guys hopped on and said, actually, we're already doing that. So that's one thing I was not aware of. I mean, as the guy managing all the engineers, sometimes you can't keep up to date with every little thing that we're doing, and I apologize, but we actually are already doing it. So. Got a question. What about automated timeout optimization? So we have two timeouts that we have as far as in the pre-bid cycle when we're going out to Amazon and we're going out to pre-bid. We set two different times based upon whether they're on a desktop or a mobile. With mobile, we typically set that rate a little bit higher. And what it is if we hit, on average, I think the default is if we hit 1.2 seconds and we haven't received all the bids back from pre-bid, we typically will then cut that short and just send whatever bids we have gone. So usually the most amount of time we have to wait for an ad to show up is about 1.5 seconds. On mobile, I believe we set that to 2 seconds just because there can be lower bandwidth speeds that can take longer for those bids to come back and get handled. All right, it looks like we have exhausted all the questions. If you have more questions later on, because I know that this is a pretty technical topic, and if you want to ask those questions, you can feel free to reach out to myself. My contact information is on the website, or reach out to your PubOps member, and they can get those questions over to me, and we can get them answered for you. This video is going to be up on YouTube in probably a few minutes, and so you're more than welcome to watch it and share it as you feel fit. Thanks for your time today, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your Thursday and a great weekend coming up.